here. So we're going to record as always. And as always, keep your cameras on and yourself muted to keep these pesky dogs from interfering. Unless do you want to be called Dirk, Mr. Kain, Mr. Dirk? What do you prefer me to address you as?
Your Honor. No, I was kidding. No, Dirk is fine, Mr. Kain.
Okay. So unless Dirk asks you to unmute and have a full-on conversation, that's perfectly fine too. But just make sure that you use your Zoom etiquette. And thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Dirk. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course.
And I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself, and you go for it.
Okay, great. Well, obviously, Blake and Katie, I know you and your family, and I appreciate you having me on here. So Sandy, your mom reached out to me, and she was talking about some of her things that she was doing with the program, and I saw her on Facebook making some posts, and then I called your dad, and I said, well, hey, that resume workshop, I think that's something I can really help out with. And so I spent the last 8 years I spent at Tech Systems, or a IT recruiting and staffing, IT services and staffing firm. So we did a lot of, not just, so we would find IT resources to work at. We have IT resources working at your dad's company, US Express, Blue Cross, TVA, Unum. And I cover what's called the end user support realm, which is a lot of entry level positions in the IT. So I really help people coming out of college, Chat State, UTC, Dalton State, and would really help them, help them with career development. How to write a resume, how to prepare for an interview, how to ask for a raise. So these are all things that, I was providing the IT folks that I was helping find jobs, but I was providing them stuff they could take other places too. So, I think really, this one's around resume building and creation. So let's just focus on that. But I kind of compare, getting a job. There's really two parts of it. There's the resume, and then there's the interview, right? Hey, what do you look like on paper versus, what do you look like in real life? And I think I kind of compare the resume and the interview to like sales and marketing, right? Marketing is really, this is really simplistic, but marketing is getting someone to look at something. Sales is getting them in. And your resume kind of gets you the interview, and then you kind of go in there and get the job by executing the interview. So, really, we're just kind of go over some really basic things as far as resume building. And so this is applicable whether you're coming out of college, coming out of high school, looking for a summer job while you're in high school. So, and I know Sandy and Joe, you said you're going to provide some, whether they can replay this, or we can, if I have some documents, some sample resumes I could send you. And obviously, so a lot of those are IT focused from back in my days in IT, but it's all applicable. So let's just kind of go through some things and really kind of help better understand what we're going to do here. So really, what is the importance of a great resume? It's really quite simple, is to get someone to look at someone, drawing someone's attention to your abilities and how those abilities, skills, and experience, match up with the position that they're trying to fill. So you really always want to figure out what's on the employer's mind, the person potentially hiring you. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people can make is they're so focused on them. We'll talk about there could be a section in your resume called objective or summary, where you kind of brag about yourself. We'll talk about today, why I suggest don't do that. Just so some basic things. Who reads resumes? Well, obviously hiring managers, directors, human resources, internal talent acquisition. And really, we need to understand of how they read a resume. I think if we understand how they look at something, then we can better equip you. You can be better equipped to really making sure what's on paper is something that they're going to look at. And then really, we'll kind of go over some basic things, length of the resume, how long do potential employers look at resumes? So those are some of the things that we're going to really kind of dive into at the beginning. Then we'll move into structure, just basic things like format, font, orientation, how do you showcase your abilities on paper? How many pages should a resume contain? et cetera, et cetera. So really, let's, I think one of the key things to remember here when you're writing a resume is that potential employers look at your resume for 30 to 50 seconds. There you go. That's all they look at it for. So you really have that amount of time to grab their attention. So once they, can everyone hear me okay? Good. Sorry, I said something kind of glitched there. But no, they only look at your resume for 30 to 50 seconds. Now, if they see a keyword or some sort of something in your resume, then that kind of grabs their attention. And then they start taking a deeper dive into what you bring to the table. But 30 seconds, I look at resumes. And the average hiring manager, well, for IT, they usually get about, here in Chattanooga, my IT manager is roughly 70 to 90 resumes per position. So let's think about that. I mean, do you have time to look at that many pieces of paper? Most people don't. So really, that's why it's really important to kind of grab their attention immediately. So let's talk about structure. Does anyone on the call, Blake, Katie, have you ever written a resume before? I mean, I'm not sure if you have one or ever seen one. No? Well, that's probably, I'm glad I asked that question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my resume. And of course, mine, there's just kind of what I do and my experience being in the workforce for, as long as your dad has. There's a lot of things that I've done, but let me, I want to share the screen. Let's see here. All right. Sorry, I'm really sorry. There we go. Everybody see that? Okay, so let's talk about some basic things here with a resume. So I've structured mine like this. Some people like to center it in the page. It just doesn't really matter. So what I have is my name and my title, my contact information, and that's really only the, you'll have your name, your email address, and typically your contact number. It's typically what you're going to have when you're, when Blake and Katie, when you're, writing a resume. Well, that's all the information. Some people include their address just to let people know where they live. That can be important to a potential employer as far as where you're, where you live, as far as how long it's going to take you to get to work. So you can include your address as well. Especially for you too, like the education is going to be super important. Obviously yours is going to be high school, but really include, you can include courses. So I have my, my major, my minor, just basic activities. But this is going to be the bulk of your resume. Now, do either of Blake or Katie, do you have any work experience? Okay, so this is going to be a primary focus of really, where you go to school. It could be just trying to think here. You're gonna have your dates there. Like, Katie, when did you start high school?
I started in August 2017.
Okay, 2017. So great. So you'll have August 2017 to, April 2021. You're graduating?
Yes, I'm graduating.
That is awesome. When's just two more, I guess a month and a half of school left?
Yeah, I have about 3 weeks left of the classes.
Okay, awesome. That's exciting. Well, this is going to be really, this should be really helpful for you. So really, you just want to kind of break down what, so for how I would do it for you is obviously put some of the courses that you've taken, some of the classes you've taken, some of the clubs you're a part of. It could be anything, Key Club, drama, orchestra, FBLA, whatever it is. these are all things that you want to include in your resume. They really like to see people that are really involved, sports activities. So that'll be your education. And then now let's kind of move into experience, because I think, if you've ever, I'm not sure, have you ever volunteered anywhere, Katie or Blake?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really, you need to focus on specifically what that work was. Like, hey, like for example, do I even have it on here? Here we go. Associations and clubs, Chattanooga Room in the Inn. So now for me, and what I do and where I'm at with my career, it doesn't really make sense for me to kind of dive into detail what I did there, but you would want to. Like, if that's something that if you volunteered somewhere, like I would say, hey, work with women to help them build resumes and help them prepare for interviews. These are some of the things that I would include on my resume. So it's really important that, your education and your associations and clubs, and it just depends on it depends on what kind of volunteer work it is. You might want to include that in experience, because just because you weren't paid for it doesn't mean that it's not experience. So you want to put the same things, put the month and the day that you were part of the volunteer work that you did, and really dive into kind of what your title was. Like, hey, I helped out at the Chattanooga Soup Kitchen or Chattanooga Food Bank. You would say, say like you were working. You should say put like, hey, volunteer as a clerk. So you guys put, Chattanooga Food Bank clerk, and you could put volunteer, and just kind of, hey, unpacked boxes and unpacked boxes, placed items onto shelves, load vans, organized material. So as you can see right here from my experience, so tech systems, I put Chattanooga, Tennessee, account manager, and I just kind of give a brief description. Say, outside sales and business development role to build partnerships with Chattanooga area companies to help them achieve their IT and business goals. Actually, I just noticed something. Okay, so I have a period at the end of that sentence. That's not a sentence, so don't put a period there. So I don't know why I did that. So this is really important. So let's get into content. So here we have bullet points. So I give a brief synopsis of what I did, and then I put a bullet points. Build out territory with a new product line. Educate clients on tech systems offerings as it pertains to their line of business. So notice how I'm using phrases here. I'm capitalizing the first word, but I'm just using phrases, no periods. I don't say I build out territories I don't say I educated clients on tech systems offerings. I didn't say Dirk. By the way, never, ever speak in third person in a resume. It's awful. It's probably the worst thing you can ever do. Sorry, Joe, Sandy, if you've ever done that. It's really corny and don't ever do it. But so you really want to keep it short and to the point. But depending on what you did, there might be a lot of detail to it. So, but yeah, capitalize the first word, no period. Be person neutral. You're not speaking in first person, second person, or third person. First being I, second being you, and third being Katie, Blake. Is all this making sense? Is this helpful, Katie, Blake?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you have any questions, let me know. But really basic, you just want to, for example, if you worked at the Chattanooga Food Bank, you put professional experience, Chattanooga Food Bank, comma, Chattanooga, Tennessee, December 2015 to present. Below that, you would put volunteer clerk, and then you would make your little synopsis. Partner with Chattanooga Food Bank to meet the demands of et cetera, and then you would put bullet points down. Joe, Sandy, anything that you want to add or anything that I omitted that you feel like can be helpful?
I think you've covered a lot of it. I mean, obviously being more coming out of high school or being into high school and getting that first time job is really harnessing what they've done in education purposes is kind of what you've highlighted. And I think that's key, right? Is telling them that you're successful in something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a previous job. It just has to, like, you're completing high school is a big deal, even in the entry level workplace. So like highlight the clubs and highlight your grades if you needed to, if you don't have anything else. But I don't know, Dirk, do you have a lot of input on like high schoolers coming in entry level? Like, do you say like a GPA if they have a good one?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Some people, if it's their first job, they might include a GPA or an ACT or an SAT score. And that could be applicable, I think. If you're coming right out of high school, it's something you might want to include. Now, depending on what it is, would I include my GPA? Probably not. But it would depend on what it was, right? My GPA was, we'll say it's less than 3.0 and just leave it at that. But I'm not going to include that, nor what I've done in the past really requires anything like that. But no, Joe, I think that was really well said. I think it's really, I think if it was me, it goes in this order. For example, IT is a little bit different. Some occupations like being an attorney, being a doctor, obviously education's super important. You have to go to law school. You have to go to medical school. In the field that I worked in, IT, it's a lot less important. It was experience, certifications, degree, in that order of importance. It wasn't like a degree. A degree wasn't important. It was just less important than certifications and experience. But no matter where you're applying, experience dominates. It really does. So if you really have some volunteer work that you've done, if you don't have any, what they call W-2 or employee experience, I would really start focusing on that volunteer work and education. That's really all you have at this point, and that's all you should have. Your kids. But really, we need to really understand really how the resume should look on paper. I think that's what I want to get. I hope you get out of this workshop is really how it looks on paper. You don't see, I don't have a lot of stuff going on here, right? There's not like any kind of, my name isn't in some crazy font or calligraphy. I don't have like little cute pictures of bunnies or anything like that off to the side. People put some pretty crazy stuff on their resumes. They put their picture on a resume. They don't really care about that. The resume, like I said before, is, and that's why I really say, don't put opinions. You'll see people like, will say right on the resumes, like, self-starter or motivator or hardworking or team player. Those are opinions. They might be true. Katie, you might be a great team player. Blake, you might be highly motivated. But the interview is really where a lot of those items are flushed out, and it doesn't need to go on paper. So really, those are the key things. No opinions. Do not speak in first, second, or third person. Make sure it's really easy to read, like mine is, and you can play with the colors. Like, for example, my education, University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, it doesn't have to be in red. It can be in blue. It could be bolded. It doesn't. You can kind of bring your own style, to it. So what I'm showing you here isn't necessarily gospel, but you really need to understand the flow of the resume. Education, experience. For me, it's professional experience. For you, it'll be volunteer experience. Associations and clubs. So really, it should have a nice, easy flow to it. It should be really easy to read. And I'm sorry, I'm just kind of reviewing. I'm trying to repeat myself. Bullet points, always use bullet points. Always. Do not write anything on your resume in sentence or paragraph form. Don't ever do that. Some employers, it doesn't really bother them that much, but yours is going to stick out. Really, what we want to do is, if I'm saying there's 70 to 90 applicants per position, then we need your resume to stand apart from the rest. And the first way to do that is make it easy to read, have a nice flow to it. So I mean, I don't really have too much more. I mean, if it's, I think I will then I would like to, I mean, if you get some value out of this and, this is something that could help you, then we can kind of get into another seminar. I don't want to speak for Sandy, you or Joe, but we can help out with interview preparation and a lot of things that goes. I mean, that's a lot more. There's a lot more anxiety and a lot more negative emotions tend to come along with that kind of situation. So I can help you prepare for that and kind of increase your knowledge and just lower your anxiety. So if that's something, Sandy, I can help out with, then I'd be happy to do that. Sorry if things were a little scattered today. I was, like I said, I'm having some, speaking of IT, Blake and Katie, the motherboard on my laptop just fried not too long ago. So I'm scrambling around trying to pull up documents and everything else.
It's all good.
Zoom login information.
I have a quick question, Dirk.
Yes.
So since they are young, how far back would you recommend them going? Like just during their high school years, or like?
I think high school, I think, if it was middle school, I think there's some things like National Honor Society or chorus or drama. I think sports might be less important in middle school and more important in high school. I think it's all personal preference. I think you definitely want to stay away from having your resume too long. Right. I think for them, you want to probably keep it at a page and a half max. It just all depends on the depth of kind of that volunteer experience. Right. But, to answer your question, I think it would it was something pretty substantial, like, Miss Junior Chattanooga or, whatever. I think that's something that you would want to include, even though during your middle school years. So I think it's just a personal preference. I think we can all kind of determine we all think we're pretty cool and pretty important, but, I think you can kind of use your best judgment there of what you would include.
And maybe, I'm sorry.
What's that?
And maybe depending on what type of job or what job they're applying for, depending on what might be more important to showcase.
For sure. I mean, if you were, applying to be grounds crew at some ball fields, some baseball fields, you probably want to include that you played on the baseball team in 6th or 8th grade. That's going to apply to that situation.
Right.
So not that taking care of a baseball field, you don't have to play baseball to do that, but it just kind of shows you hey, I've done this before. I've been around, I've been in this setting before. I'm familiar with the setting. I'm comfortable with that setting. So that's a great question, Sandy, because really it's not psychological warfare, but you do want to put things on resumes that are very, that are relevant to the position you're applying for. And really, you can kind of play off that. Some people, want to kind of mimic job descriptions. Don't do that. Be yourself. Obviously try to write it directed towards the industry or the job that you're wanting or you're applying for, of course. But don't get in the habit of trying to, cover all these bases with a resume, especially for their age.
Joe and I were also talking a little bit just now about how important it might be to continuously update your resume, because some of these dates you might forget as time goes on.
Oh, Sandy, that is incredible. That's some of the best advice. I have to do a lot of if you know what a memory jogger is, I have to do that a lot with my, with a lot of my IT professionals I was working with. Some of them have been in the industry for years, and they just couldn't extract. They couldn't remember back then. But when you start getting them back and really emotionally putting them back in that seat and what they did at that time, you can start flushing these things out. But it's a lot easier to update your resume. I tell my people to update their resume every year. Okay. Or when you change positions, like, hey, if you went from a, like a systems analyst to a mobile application developer, that's something that, you would want to update it. Right.
Right.
especially as you get older and you start really getting in your profession. Depending on what that is, there's a lot of professions that are very sought after, high demand, low supply. And there's people out there that will recruit you. They don't care if you have a job. Because the best people out there are the ones that are already working and are employed. So I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole and really focus on saying what you were talking about. 100%. Keep on adding those activities, those clubs that you're part of in school. And Katie, as you go into college, it's critical, really include those, whether it be, a sorority or, the debate team or whatever it might be, definitely include that information, include details to it with it as well. But sorry to be long-winded there, Sandy, but that's a really good point, and definitely a best practice.
I would like to, if you are interested, I would like to put myself on the spot and share my resume and let you critique it if you're interested.
Oh yes. Absolutely. Let me, can I grab some water real quick?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Sandra. All right. Well, Sandy, I nothing's more annoying than someone that asks a question, which answers a question with asking a question. But just kind of based on some of the things that we just talked about, what's your opinion? Good, bad, and the ugly.
I didn't use bullet points. There are sentences in there that stands out. Katie, I know that you're seeing something because the look on your face. What do you see?
Your date formatting isn't consistent, which
okay.
I don't know if everyone will notice that, but I know that would definitely turn me off as an applicant if their formatting isn't consistent.
I think details are important like that.
Gosh, Katie, you gonna be a hiring manager someday? I think so. Well,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, I know there are others, but I don't know.
So let's see here. So objective. So objective, it's one of those things where we can say if your resume is too long, it hurts you, right? If your resume is not well formatted, it's going to hurt you. Having an objective, I don't think it helps you or hurts you. It's really kind of that personal preference like we talked about. I don't do it. And when people ask me if they want my opinion, I would admit it because it's going to leave me room for more stuff that means more. Because I'm speaking, as soon as I go into, and Sandy, you asked for my feedback. So
yes, please.
So I think using the pronoun I, they want to know what you can do for them. And I think for some reason, it's just kind of like this psychological thing here. They really like to just read stuff and not like it. When you put I would love. So I'm just going to play devil's advocate. Okay. If I'm an employer, right, I'm reading your resume. I would love. Well, I'm the one trying to find someone. I don't really care what Sandy loves. I know what I love. And I know what I love in employees and what I'm looking for. So pardon me while I kind of shift into that kind of devil's advocate.
No, please do.
Trying to really get in the head of the person reading my resume. Because there's so many biases that we have about ourselves, right? And a lot of them are true. right? I mean, I'm not trying to inflate anyone's ego here, but we're all here pretty good. I feel like we're pretty good people. Joe and Sandy had great experience, great education. I think there's some things we should feel really good about, but I think it's really taking the perspective, really what they're looking for. All they're thinking about is they obviously have an opening, right? Which means they have a gap. They're having to pick up more work or shift that to somebody else. Like whatever it is, it's not a pleasant experience for somebody. So that's where their head is. Like, hey, we're picking up, like we're Amazon. I just lost 2 people. We're coming up on October. Like we're in we have a problem here. And Joe and your dad's line of work is really, I mean, that's logistics. I mean, when someone's down, I mean, they're hurting really bad. So I say all that to really illustrate that you really want to kind of get into their head and really understand what they're thinking when they're even looking at your resume. They're usually hemorrhaging from a staffing perspective or an employment perspective. So first of all, they're not going to look at it very quick. So I really remove the word I. So I would love to work with a team of professionals in leading and teaching our community how to better themselves, their family, and their lives. Objective, and this is the one section you can put in paragraph form if you would like, or sentence form, just the way that it reads, but you don't have to. I would leave it as a phrase. Objective, to work with a team of professionals in leading and teaching our community how to better themselves, their family, and their lives.
That definitely sounds better.
That's it. Skills and abilities. So what do you think? I want to read this to you because sometimes when we read it and then we hear it, it kind of has 2 different impacts. I'm accountable and prompt and have excellent multitasking and organizational skills. What do you think I'm going to say about that sentence?
I used I.
Used I.
You shouldn't talk about yourself to that degree as much as you should put what you've done.
What? That's true. That's true. And I think you're right. You're on the right track. I think it's because I don't think that you're really bragging there. I think there are people do brag on resumes. You didn't do that. But accountable, prompt, multitasking, organizational skills, they're facts, right? But
right.
To this person, it's an opinion, really.
Right. That's true.
So I would take anything that's an opinion. Background. So I'll put background. Confident when presenting in public speaking. That's something that you might want to leave on there. It's an opinion, but it's a little bit so that could probably stay in there. Background with student child growth development, but I would bullet point your skills out too, right? Public speaking. I would just put public speaking. I wouldn't even put the degree. Great public speaking. A lot of experience public speaking. Comfortable, confident public speaking. No, just public speaking.
Okay.
Organization. Not great organizational skills or excellent organizational skills. Organization or organizational skills. See how we're kind of we're just kind of changing it so it just has it just reads a lot better, a lot cleaner. It's less about you and more about it's kind of like I said, the psychological warfare. Experience. Katie brought up a great point about the dates. Let's do this. Let's shift the dates to the right margin and then shift everything down the left margin. So I want to see Title I educator, Title I partnerships. I want to see that first. Okay. I want to see that bigger. I want to see a little bit bigger. You don't have to blow it up like a balloon, but I would increase the font on that. If you're using an 11, I'd probably get it to if you're a 10, I would use it maybe a 12 or a 13. I like that it's got a different font. I definitely like that. I taught clients in group homes, life skills such as healthy relationships, sex ed, finance, parenting, community services.
Hey, Dirk, in this particular case, so her last employment was in 2007. So if you were looking at a resume on an HR side, you would say, okay, so why are you re-entering the job situation 14 years later, right? So would you actually put an experience that said from 2007 to present, raising children, putting something in the resume that shows the gap?
Depends on, it really depends on the situation. If someone's been, volunteering at a preschool or, volunteering at church, finance division of the church, or, the, whatever it is, if you've spent a significant amount of time there, that's kind of really what you want to fuse it. You don't want to fluff it, right? We don't want this to turn into deceptive marketing, but you really want to, I guess, gently kind of what Joe, you're getting at, hey, there's a significant gap on this resume. Well, from a professional experience, maybe, right? Probably. But that's kind of where we kind of shift. We're not kind of shifting the narrative. We're just kind of shifting a little bit and really thinking of all the other things that we've done, right? Just because we haven't been paid for it. Do you help out at your church?
It brings up a good point too. Yes, I could add that there, but I've also had other odd jobs that I didn't add there. I only added the jobs that corresponded with my degree, which isn't necessarily the way I should do this. But maybe it was for the reason I wrote the resume. I don't remember. This is from 2019.
That's a great point. And I get that in IT a lot. And Blake and Katie, obviously, you're very young. But as you get in your experience, we get so focused on what we want to do, and that's important, right? But it's not what we want, it's what we can do for an employer. We can just kind of shift that mindset. So with that being said, it doesn't matter what it is. I get this question a lot. It's a very popular question within the IT field because IT is so specialized, right? So they get really scared when they've been at IT. IT is a little bit different because it changes so rapidly. So in that field, you got to have some recent experience. But the rule of thumb is 100%, 10 days a week. Monday through what I say, Monday through Sunday. What I say, 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. Do it all the time. All the time is put all of your experience, relevant or not. There's nothing worse than a gap in employment. Nothing worse than to a potential employer. So just because it's not something you're interested in or what you went to school for, if you were a server, you worked retail at JCPenney, doesn't matter, So I hope that answered your question.
No, it does. And I think so, like even in Sandy's case, from 2007, like she founded 2 different things in town that were, school related for the kids and co-ops and different things that she could actually highlight a lot of founding and doing things that were organized and like could blow the resume up really big.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, seriously, like volunteer work is super important. It doesn't matter. It's still experience, right? Whether you help out as, I was the president of the East Hamilton Rotary Club. I, help out a room at the inn. Like, that's great experience. I'm not paid for it, right? Just because I have another job and I decide to volunteer somewhere else, it doesn't matter if someone exclusively volunteers, right? So I think those 2 organizations you started or help develop or just really showcase that. I would dive into some detail, like creating something from scratch. Like that's really important. Doesn't need to be, completely amplified, but I think you want to include some bullet points there on what you did to develop that and maintain it and run it and everything else. I think you want to showcase that in that position. So, but yeah, to answer your question, it's just really, and memory jogging is really, I keep on saying that, but it really doing some activities and there's some activities, some things I can look up on the internet. You can look up memory jogging, but it's really just kind of looking at different words and it just creates different emotions and different feelings and different memories. And you'd be amazed at the things you can extract from your brain of what you've done over the last 20, 30 years,
I think Blake maybe had his hand up a minute ago. Did you have a question, Blake?
Yeah, I was wondering if when you write a resume, if it needs to be organized by like section by section, or if you can put like your achievements and like the clubs that you did in order of like the time you did them.
That's a great question, Blake. That's an excellent question. For me, I'll just use this as an example: education versus experience. For me, let's see here. Let me pull up. Let's see here. If I can share a screen.
You can take it back.
Yeah, you can take it back. Definitely.
Okay. Did I take it back? You cannot share screen while the other participant is sharing.
There. Now you can.
Take it back.
You're so nice here at Zoom.
Oh, I did notice something on your resume, Mom, that you mentioned in the very end about being a really good leader, and then you mentioned like being a stay-at-home mom to 6 kids, and that's like really good. But I also think that if you're going into the workforce, not all employers are really going to want to know that you have 6 kids, because they're going to think that you're not going to be as dedicated to their workforce because you have those kids.
That's true.
Katie, that's amazing. I mean, that really is. This is one of those things, and I'm so glad you kind of brought it up that way, because yeah, is it discrimination? Of course it is, but like, come on now, let's be real, right? If they're looking for someone with a flex schedule, like, hey, our Tuesdays are crazy in the morning and our Thursdays are crazy in the evening, well, we need someone that can cover that position, but you need to be flexible. Someone that's got 6 kids probably has a little bit more rigid schedule, right? Picking up from school activities, everything else. So in that example, okay, it's a great thing to put up. I think it's awesome you got 6 kids. Would I put on the resume? Probably not. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. But if I was applying to a daycare, it goes back to what we were talking about, right? Well, then I would put it on a resume, right? So I think it just all depends. So it can depend on what the position is and some other items that we talked about, like hours and stuff like that. But Blake, back to what we'll shift gears to what Blake had asked. Maybe my resume isn't formatted the best way it could be, right? Someone with a lot of professional experience, that should come before education. Absolutely, right? I just decided to put it this way. This resume I created because I had to. We had this big opportunity at TVA, and we were one of their vendors, and they wanted to see everybody's resume. It's just something that they wanted because they're a government agency. So I kind of like slapped this together pretty quick. But I didn't say slap it together. I mean, I put it together solidly, but there's some things I just didn't think about. So with that being said, Blake, to answer your question, for you, I would put education first, right? And then activities, right? Clubs, organizations. Let's just say you had one job, you might want to put that last, So to answer your question, it's really, and you asked another question about recent to the oldest. You were like, hey, is that what I do? Or do I switch back and forth between, experience, education, depending on how things fall? No, you want to keep those sections separate. Like in education, you want to start with your most recent, say for me, it would be this. And then of course I have my college, right? First, I have my preparatory school second, right? See the dates. And then I have my public high school third. So, and you would do that accordingly. Always put the most recent first, but always keep it separated from education, experience, clubs and activities, etc. So yes, you want them in chronological order within each section. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome. No, these are excellent. This is why you have it for 45 minutes.
Do
Do you need a resume to apply to a job?
No, you don't. People call in places, walk in places. Should you have something prepared? Probably, I would. But it just, if you're applying to a job, like on a website, yeah, you want to include your resume, no matter how basic it is, because you just have to have, it's almost like your ID almost. Like that's, so, but there are situations, I'm just trying to let you know, if I was calling in somewhere, I just say, hey, I saw your, but meaning your first contact to them wasn't your resume. So it just depends on how comfortable you are, what your style is. I've had IT people call in to employers, and ask about positions. Say, hey, I saw this position on your website. I don't know. I know it's a pretty lengthy application process. Hey, did I get you at a bad time? I had a couple of questions to ask about that position before. I just want to make sure I knew what it was. That could be a situation, right? And if you're good on the phone and that's kind of your personality, now if someone was more introverted, I probably wouldn't go that route, right? It's just depending on what your personality and style is, but some people can really showcase personality is important. Cultural fit. We didn't get into this because it's kind of that in between a resume and interviewing. But the most important thing to employers, believe it or not, experience is really important. Cultural fit is very important, right? Someone like me, software developers they do collaborate, right? But they kind of want to be in their little corner, like coding, just like leave me alone, put their headphones on. And someone like me, I probably would be good for that organization. I probably annoy them. So I'm kind of being funny there, but you had asked the question, do you always want to include a resume to apply a job online? Both you kids have grown up exclusively in the information age, and that's how people do things, right? So absolutely include your resume there. Always, is there other ways to get jobs without a resume? Absolutely.
I've seen in some resumes they have recommendation letters like attached to their resumes. Is that something that's common? Should you recycle recommendation letters? There are various positions.
Oh, that's a great question. I had companies. That's one of the things that we would do as IT recruiters is, we wanted something that was part of our screening process. We would give them technical assessments, but we also want to talk to someone that could speak on their behalf about their technical abilities, right? And sometimes a recommendation letter does that, kind of, walks them through briefly, maybe it's usually like 3 short paragraphs about your experience and what that person's what their experience was when you worked with them. So recommendation letters can be very important. Now, I would always suggest to put references on request. That's a good habit to get into because things get shuffled around and you want to respect the people that are providing a reference. And to answer your question, Katie, recommendation letters are important. Can have they can really produce a powerful impact statement. A lot of employers want to reach out to your references directly because they have some pointed questions around the position they're trying to fill and how things that you did for them are more pertinent, where a recommendation letter is more general. And then a reference, whether it be on the phone or usually over the phone, is a lot more pointed. It has a lot more impact. But recommendation letters, if I was going to apply to, TVA, I probably want to include my experience at Georgia Power or provide someone that can speak on my behalf. If I was, looking at TVA and say, hey, I'm going to be applying to the the director of, hydroelectric, then if I had a reference, if I reported to the director of hydroelectric at Georgia Power, probably want to include that. That'd be probably great to include that reference that recommendation letter. So once again, it kind of goes back to, is it relevant to the job and what you're applying for? So, I mean, I think, but sometimes people just want to know about who you are, right? And how you interacted with the team. You know, were you reliable? Did you show up to work on time? Were you did you have attendance issues? So, and sometimes in a recommendation letter is not going to say that, right? So a lot of employers want to reach out to the reference themselves, but once again, sorry to be long-winded, but that's kind of how I would approach it on a kind of a case-by-case basis. It's not required. It can be effective. But no, I mean, any more questions? Anything else I can shed some light on? Was this helpful?
Very helpful. I was just going to add just a little. So when I have resumes that do come across my desk, to your point, 30 seconds to a minute is about the most I spend on it, unless something catches my eye. And even if I'm going into an interview process with a candidate, most of the time I don't look at their resume because they've been provided from HR that's done a lot of the screening, and I'll look at it 10 minutes before the interview to get some pointers of what to talk about. And then you're going to talk through the resume a lot of times on it. So I would say make sure that it's factual and there's no ad lib to a resume, because I'm probably going to call you out on it on a resume type environment in an interview, and you're going to have to answer questions and tell me more about what you did and that type of work. And then to your point on gaps, those are usually red flags on resumes. So, and I usually in an interview process ask them about their gap. Like specifically, what did you do between this time and this time? Because it doesn't look like you were employed. What were you doing? And so it's going to come up if it's in the resume and there's a gap and there's nothing that you can, and it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's going to probably become a conversation piece within the interview. So be prepared for the interview at that point based off what's on your resume.
No, I think, Joe, those are excellent points. And I did want to, when you had mentioned, like, hey, I look at the resume like 10 minutes before, really familiarize myself with the resume. But do you still use that kind of as a helpful guide throughout the resume or throughout the interview?
Yeah, usually I'll have a piece of paper where I'm taking notes, and then I'll have their actual resume. When we were in person, I'd have it printed in front of me, and I'd be referring back to it and asking questions. Hey, it looks like in 2008 you did this. What did you do in that instance? So like it's jogging their memory to take them back. And I purposely don't do the last job. I usually go back 2 or 3 jobs to jog their memory further back so I can see where their passion was along the way. But yeah, I always have it in front of me. And then sometimes I'll have interview questions, kind of some generic ones. But the truth is I would rather keep people on their toes and ask questions off of their resume and use dialogue that way rather than asking a generic question off of a Google search, because that's what they're prepared for. They're not prepared for somebody asking them about details about what they've done on a resume.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You're speaking my language. And I think this is really a good transition into, if you're comfortable with how this was formatted today and how things went, as we move into the interview preparation aspect of it. This is key because Joe's 100% right. They don't ask questions. They don't ask the cliche questions or stuff that you can look up on Google. They're going to zero in on your resume. So who knows your resume better than anybody? You do. But we get in that situation. We're in the hot seat now, right? Anxiety, we're talking to people we don't know before. We're in an unfamiliar place. We need something to guide us through it. We have the resume, right? Well, I'm going to teach you in the interview preparation portion on how to write a cheat sheet version or an unabridged version of your resume. Things that are just way too much detail that nobody really wants to know about. It makes your resume so word heavy, you would never put that in there. So you have a resume. I have this resume that I hand to a potential employer. But guess what I also have? I have an unabridged version of my resume. So every bullet point you see, chemistry, major with concentration organic small scale synthesis. And I would put organic chemistry 1, studied nomenclature, hybrids, hybridization, aromaticity, resonance stabilization. Organic 2, I would put in bullet points, mechanism, proton electron movement. I see how I'm never going to ever include that on a resume. It'd be silly. But see how I'm ready if they ever want to dive into my education. See how I'm audible ready. Even if I went in there and started like having a nervous breakdown, and just so filled with anxiety because I'm nervous, that's going to lower your anxiety and it's going to help you kind of pull the information out. So that's a little teaser. It's a little preview of the next workshop. But that's some of the things we can dive into and really make sure that, hey, the resume, boom, we got them to look at us, right? They got it to call it to call us. We got an interview. Now what? So that's chapter 2 of the Dirk Kain career series.
Awesome teaser going into the next one. Obviously, I think we're at time for tonight, but looking forward to the next one. I think it'll be really beneficial, and maybe we can have the 4 that we're on tonight create some resumes, and then we can either go back through those in some form or fashion, and can ask a type of environment that is, back and forth on an interview style process for maybe the next one or something as well. So.
Oh, I love it. I know we're right here at the end of time. But I love that idea, Joe, is to kind of have some initial dialogue exchange at the beginning. I think for some of your other listeners that tuned in, I think they can kind of see that interaction, and it's just not theory, someone giving their opinion. Hey, we can actually apply these techniques, these skills, and help them. Oh gosh, he was given free resume. He did a resume seminar, then he looked at your resumes and corrected them or helped you edit them. Oh, that's pretty cool. So I think if they kind of see them seeing your other viewers, in this example, it's your children, getting something out of it, I think that's going to really help drive what you're trying to accomplish here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and for doing this for us tonight, Dirk. We greatly appreciate it.
You're no problem at all. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.
All right, Pricers, good night.
You guys have a good night.
Thank
Bye.
You. Bye.